When my husband went on a business trip, I stayed with my in-laws to help with their renovations. Every day, I cleaned, cooked, and cared for their sick dog. Then I overheard my mill on the phone saying, "She's just here because she's useless without him." The next morning, all my bags were in the hallway with a note. "Time to go home, Maid." I left without a word. 2 months later, they begged me to come back, but this time, I made my own list of rules. I was standing in the hallway of my in-laws' house in Temecula, staring at my suitcases like I'd just walked in on my own eviction. Every bag was zipped shut and stacked by the front door, like an Uber was about to pull up for me. On top of everything was a ripped piece of notebook paper with 4 words written in my mill's thin, sharp handwriting. "Time to go home, Maid." For a second, I honestly thought it was a joke, some stupid attempt at humor. But the house was completely silent, and the only sound was their old terrier coughing behind me from the living room, the same dog I'd been waking up at 6 a.m. for to feed his prescription food. I felt my ears get hot, and my throat tightened so fast it hurt. Just 12 hours earlier, I had heard my mill's voice coming through the cracked door of the guest room. She didn't know I was coming down the hallway with laundry in my arms. "She's just here because she's useless without him," she said, laughing. "Honestly, I don't know how my son tolerates someone so needy, but at least she can mop." My FIL chuckled in the background. Someone clinked a glass. Another voice asked if I was really staying all week. "Oh, she'll stay as long as he's gone," my mill said. "Keeps her busy. Poor thing doesn't have a life of her own." I had frozen right there, still holding the warm towels, feeling like someone had hit a pressure point behind my ribs. I'd come to help them while my husband was on a business trip in Seattle. They were renovating the kitchen and both were overwhelmed. His mom had practically begged on the phone. "We just need an extra pair of hands for a few days," she'd said. "You're so good with the house stuff." And yeah, I thought it would be nice, maybe even bonding. I brought groceries. I reorganized their pantry, cleaned the guest room, cooked dinner every night because they couldn't use their kitchen, walked their sick dog, even when he threw up on the carpet and then again on my shoes. I didn't complain once. But that night, after hearing her, I went upstairs, sat on the edge of the guest bed, and tried to swallow the feeling that maybe I'd always been some kind of joke to them. I didn't say anything. I didn't confront her. I just kept my face calm during dinner, even when my stomach was twisting. And then the next morning, the bags, the note, the complete lack of anyone in the house. They had left for the day, without a word, like they were avoiding the scene they had created. I didn't cry. I didn't write a note back. I didn't even call my husband because I didn't trust myself not to sob into the phone. I just dragged my bags outside, loaded my car, and drove home in silence. The thing is, I thought that was the end of it. I told myself I'd keep my distance. Pretend it didn't happen. Let time do whatever people always say time does. But 2 months later, I got a text from my mill that made my stomach drop for a completely different reason. "We need you to come back. It's important, please." And that was when I realized they weren't calling for help. They were calling because they finally needed something only I could give them. And this time, I wasn't coming back as their maid. I met my husband, Mark, 6 years ago in San Diego. He was steady, calm, the kind of guy who remembered to bring an umbrella even when the weather app said there was only a 5% chance of rain. His parents, though, they were a different story. Not monsters, just the kind of people who acted like manners were optional around their own family. In the beginning, I honestly tried. I really did. His mom, Linda, had this way of complimenting me that always came wrapped in a thin layer of insult. "You're so sweet," she'd say, "even if you're not really the ambitious type." Or, "I love that Mark married someone simple. He needs that." Stuff I told myself wasn't worth fighting over. His dad, Gary, mostly stayed quiet, more of a nod and grunt type. He'd smile when I cooked something he liked, but he never said thank you. Sometimes I wondered if he even knew how. Despite all that, I put in the effort. Holidays, birthdays, every Sunday dinner when they decided last minute to invite us and expected us to drop everything. I kept telling myself that marriage meant family and family meant trying. Mark appreciated it. That made it worth it. But there were signs, little ones, that I should have paid attention to. Like the time I got a job offer for a front desk position at a hotel in Carlsbad. It wasn't glamorous, but I wanted it. It was something that was mine. When I told his parents during dinner, Linda tilted her head and said, "But who's going to keep the house running?" "You know Mark works long hours." I laughed it off, thinking she was being dramatic. But later, he told me quietly in the car, "Maybe she's right. We're already comfortable. You don't need to work unless you want to." I did want to. So I took the job anyway. But after a year of dealing with a manager who constantly changed my schedule and coworkers who quit every other week, I burned out. I quit. And even though I didn't regret leaving, I felt like Linda mentally stamped it as proof I couldn't stick with anything. I didn't realize how deeply she'd frozen me into this useless narrative until that week staying with them. The renovation project was supposed to be simple. Their kitchen was torn apart, the floors covered in dust, counters taped off. Linda complained constantly that she felt trapped without a stove. Gary had thrown out his back lifting something he shouldn't have. Their dog, Milo, was on medication and whining every night. They were overwhelmed, and I stepped in the second Mark suggested it. "You'd be helping them a lot," he had said. "Just until I'm back." I remember packing like I was heading to some awkward family retreat. Told myself, it's just for a week, be useful, be kind, stay out of the way. I even brought my own cleaning supplies because I knew theirs were either ancient or empty. The first couple of days weren't terrible. Linda praised my cooking. Gary nodded more than usual. Milo followed me around like I was his nurse. I scrubbed dishes in their tiny laundry room sink and wiped down the dust on every surface twice a day. I barely sat down. I think that's why the overheard conversation hit me so hard. I wasn't just helping. I was working. I was filling in the cracks of their life while mine sat on pause. And to them, I wasn't family, I was labor. When they tossed my bags in the hallway, it was like they finally said the quiet part out loud. But the story didn't end with me walking out of their house. Because 2 months later, when they reached back out, it wasn't with insults. It was with desperation. And as soon as I realized why, everything shifted. 2 months passed after I left their house in Temecula, and honestly, I tried to move on. I threw myself into getting our place back in order, reorganizing closets, decluttering the garage, anything to keep my mind from replaying Linda's voice calling me useless. I didn't tell Mark exactly what happened. I only said, "Your mom and I had a disagreement," which was such an understatement I still feel stupid admitting it. He noticed something was off, of course. He kept asking, "Are you sure you're okay?" And every time I said yes, because I didn't want to cause another blow-up with his family. I didn't want him stuck in the middle. I didn't want to look weak. But the distance between all of us grew anyway. We skipped Sunday dinners. I stopped answering Linda's texts, the rare ones. I muted her on Facebook. Even the sound of her name in conversations made my stomach twist. Not in anger, just in this hollow kind of disappointment you feel when someone shows you exactly how little you matter to them. Then on a random Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from her. It wasn't snide. It wasn't passive-aggressive. It wasn't even fake nice. It was pleading. "We really need your help, please call me." I stared at it for a full minute. My first thought was that it was a mistake. My second thought was that she wanted something petty, like advice on storing leftovers or replacing a vacuum filter. Something she could have Googled in 2 seconds. But then another message came through. "It's urgent, it's about the house." My heart kicked up a little. I didn't respond. That night at dinner, I casually mentioned it to Mark. He put his fork down slowly and rubbed his forehead. "Yeah," he said, "they're having problems with the renovation, big ones." I waited for him to continue, but he just stared at his plate. "What kind of problems?" I asked. He finally looked at me. "Foundation issues, mold. Electrical failures. Everything the contractor did needs to be redone. They might have to move out for a few weeks. And they need me for that," he sighed. "They trust you. They know you're more organized than either of them." I almost laughed. Trust, organized, after the way they kicked me out like trash. But then he added quietly, "And Mom's been different lately. A lot more stressed. Dad too." He said it like he was trying to defend them without actually defending them. I didn't reply. Over the next week, the messages from his parents kept coming. First from his mom, then from his dad as well, which was shocking. Gary never texted anyone. "We're losing control of everything." We're staying in a motel temporarily. Please, we need someone who knows what they're doing. Each one was more desperate than the last. And weirdly, instead of satisfaction, I just felt this slow, simmering awareness. They only wanted me when I could do something for them. Not because they respected me, not because they cared, because I was useful. Still, I didn't say yes. Not yet. I waited until the day I got the message that changed everything. Linda texted, "The contractor won't talk to us anymore. He says you're the only one he'd still respond to." That made no sense. I hadn't spoken to the contractor since I left. But I remembered the guy, quiet, careful, respectful. He'd actually thanked me for keeping things organized while they worked. Why would he ask for me? My chest tightened as a thought formed, one I didn't want to believe. What exactly had Linda told him after I left? And why was he refusing contact with them? It was the first hint that there was something bigger underneath their desperation. Something they weren't saying. Something ugly, and I was about to find out. I finally called the contractor, not because I wanted to help Linda, not because I cared about their house, but because something about that last message felt off. Like there was a whole conversation happening behind my back, and I needed to know what I'd been dragged into. His name was Daniel, a soft-spoken guy in his 40s who always treated me like I wasn't just the daughter-in-law who makes snacks. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, it's me," I said awkwardly. There was a long pause. Then he exhaled so sharply I could practically hear the tension crack through the phone. "Thank God," he said. "I didn't want to deal with them anymore." "I'm so glad you called." My stomach tightened. "Deal with them about what?" Another pause, longer this time. "They didn't tell you?" he asked. "No," I said. "They said you refused to talk to them unless I reached out." He let out this bitter laugh. "Yeah, because your mother-in-law blamed you for everything." I went still. "What do you mean, everything?" "I mean," he said, "every mistake in that house, every decision, every delay, every problem, she said it was your fault." My chest went cold. I wasn't even there when half the work happened. "I know," he said immediately. "I knew she was lying, but she wasn't just complaining. She filed a formal complaint with the company." My pulse jumped. "What?" "She said you were the one giving us unauthorized instructions, that you rearranged our work, that you told her to approve things she didn't understand. Stuff that could get someone like me fired." My voice came out small. "Why would she say that?" Daniel sighed. "Because she didn't want to pay the extra costs. She claimed the budget overages were because of your interference. She tried to pin the overruns on you so she wouldn't be responsible." I couldn't speak. "She didn't just mention your name," he continued. "She built an entire story, a timeline. She signed statements, swore that you acted on behalf of the homeowner." I sat down on the edge of my bed, shaking. "She used me," I whispered. "She tried to," he corrected gently. And when I told her I knew it wasn't true, when I said I'd refused to sign anything, she flipped out. Then she tried threatening a lawsuit. After that, I cut off all communication. I felt sick. Actually sick. Daniel wasn't done. "There's more," he said quietly. "She told the company you had a mental instability issue, that you made things up, that we shouldn't trust anything you said." My throat closed as tears burned behind my eyes. It felt like someone had taken my ribs and twisted them. "She dragged my name through all of that," I said, "behind my back, after she kicked me out." "She weaponized you," he said simply. "And now that she's backed into a corner, she wants you to fix it for her." I sat there, swallowing the truth like broken glass. This wasn't just disrespect. This wasn't just a snide comment or a thrown-away insult. This was a full betrayal. Calculated, deliberate, cruel, and the worst part, Mark had no idea, because if he had, he would have told me. I knew he would have. Which meant his mother had managed to hide the entire meltdown from him too. That was when the anger finally set in. Not the hurt, not the confusion, but the anger that fills you from the bottom up. Hot, heavy, steady. I realized she didn't see me as family. She didn't even see me as a person. She saw me as a shield. Someone to absorb the blame when she made a mess too big to crawl out of. And she expected me to come running back to help her clean it up. But instead, something else clicked into place. For the first time, I held the leverage, and I wasn't going to waste it. I didn't tell Mark anything that night. Not yet. I needed to think with a clear head. And I knew that if I dumped everything on him while I was still shaking, it would explode into a fight neither of us was ready for. So I sat on the couch with a blanket over my knees, staring at the wall while my mind ran in tight, sharp circles. Linda hadn't just lied about me. She had tried to put her entire renovation disaster on my shoulders. She signed statements. She built a story. She called me mentally unstable. And then, when it blew up in her face, she wanted me to clean up the mess. For the first time since the day I heard her calling me useless, I understood something important. She didn't underestimate me. She relied on me. And she hated the fact that she relied on me. That was my leverage. I didn't want revenge that was illegal or dramatic or something out of a movie. I wanted something that would force her to face herself. Something she couldn't spin, smear, or manipulate her way out of. And all the pieces were sitting right in front of me. The contractor. The complaint she filed. The company she lied to. The fact that she needed me to fix it because no one else would talk to her. So I made a plan. First, I called Daniel again. This time, my voice was steady. "I'm willing to help you straighten things out with your company," I told him. "But I need copies of everything she submitted. Every statement, every message." He didn't hesitate. "I'll email it all. You deserve to see it." When the files came through, I sat at the dining table scrolling through page after page of lies. She'd forged timelines. She'd written paragraphs claiming I insisted they skip safety inspections. She said I told workers to ignore her instructions and take mine instead. She said I emotionally pressured her into approving changes. The worst part wasn't the lies. It was how confidently she wrote them. No wavering, no doubt. Just a woman who believed she could say whatever she wanted about me and walk away untouched. I printed everything and put it in a folder. Next, I called the renovation company myself. I introduced myself politely, told them I wanted to provide a counterstatement, and asked if I could set up a meeting. They were more relieved than anything. Then came the part I knew mattered most, setting boundaries, rules, and expectations before I ever stepped foot back into Linda's orbit. I drafted a list. Not petty rules, not revenge fantasies, real boundaries. Things like, I will not be in the house without Mark present. All communication must be through group text with Mark included. No tasks, housework, or caregiving unless mutually agreed upon. No discussions of my mental health, motives, or character ever. Any attempt to lie about me again ends all contact permanently. Simple, clear, unbreakable. Then I added the final rule. Before I help with anything, you will admit in writing what you did. When I was done, I sat back and looked at the list. It wasn't revenge yet. Not really. It was just the framework. The revenge would come later once I chose how to use her confession. But the groundwork was ready. I told myself I would deliver it calmly, methodically, without emotion. And I would. But before I could send it, something unexpected happened. Something that shifted the entire plan. Something that made everything darker, stranger, and so much more personal than I ever imagined. Because the next morning, I got a phone call, not from Linda, not from Gary, not even from the renovation company. It was from someone who should have had no reason at all to be involved. And what they told me changed everything. The call came at 8:13 am. I remember the exact time because I was pouring coffee, and my hand froze midair when I saw the caller ID. Dr. Eisen's Temecula Family Clinic. I had no connection to that clinic. None. I hadn't been a patient there, and neither had Mark. The only people I knew who used that clinic were my in-laws. My stomach tightened. I answered. "Hello," a calm, professional voice said. "Hi, this is Dr. Eisen's office calling about Linda Larson." My grip on the phone slipped a little. "Why are you calling me?" There was a pause. "You're listed as her emergency contact." My heart thudded once hard. "No," I said quietly, "I'm not." "Well," the woman replied cautiously, "you're listed in her file, along with your number. And we need to confirm something important." I stepped back, leaning against the counter. "What is it?" She hesitated, like she wasn't sure she should say it, but then continued. "We need to verify that you've been acting as Linda's caregiver over the last few months, as she reported. We're updating her chart, and we require confirmation from the caregiver listed." My mind went blank. "What?" I whispered. "I haven't been caring for her. I haven't even seen her." The voice on the phone faltered. "She told us you moved in to help with her physical limitations during the renovation. She said you were handling medications, meal prep, mobility assistance." I cut her off. "No, I stayed there for 5 days, to help with the house." "That's it." Another long silence. Then the woman said carefully, "Ma'am, her disability claim depends on your statements." A cold wave rolled through me. Her what? Her disability claim, she repeated. She applied 2 months ago. She stated that you were her full-time in-home caregiver, unpaid, and that your husband's income wasn't enough to support the level of care she needed. I couldn't breathe. She named you, she continued. She wrote entire notes describing everything you were supposedly doing for her: daily logs, medication routines, physical assistance tasks, very detailed, all signed. My vision blurred. She hadn't just lied about the renovation. She had used my name, my labor, my time, my existence to manipulate the medical system, to get money, to build a narrative where I was practically her live-in nurse. And she'd done it right after she kicked me out. I forced myself to speak. "I need you to email me the documents she submitted, immediately." "I can request that," the woman said, "but you should know her claim was flagged because some things didn't add up. That's why we're verifying." I hung up shaking. Within half an hour, the files arrived. I sat on the floor of our living room, reading page after page of fabricated evidence. She had described me waking her at 7 a.m. every day with medication. She wrote that I handled all of her meals because she couldn't manage hot surfaces. She wrote that I supervised her walking due to fall risk. She even claimed I took her to doctor appointments. Every line was a lie. And the dates she used overlapped perfectly with the week she kicked me out and called me useless. That's when the second twist fully settled in. She didn't just need me to fix the renovation mess. She needed me to validate her disability claim. Without my confirmation, she could be charged with fraud. She had built an entire scheme on the assumption that I was too timid, too meek, too desperate for approval to push back. She thought I would cover for her. Instead, she had turned me into the one person who could destroy her entire plan. And that was the moment my anger changed shape. It wasn't just personal anymore. It was moral. It was necessary. Because now I knew exactly why she was suddenly so desperate, and exactly how much power I had. I didn't tell Mark anything yet, not because I wanted to hide it, but because I needed the full picture before dropping a bomb like this into our marriage. I spent the rest of the day rereading Linda's disability documents until the pages felt greasy in my hands. Her lies weren't clumsy. They were crafted, neat handwriting, consistent phrasing, timelines that matched her renovation records. She'd drawn a whole fictional version of me, a quiet little caregiver who lived in her house and dedicated every hour to making her life easier. But the more I read, the more something gnawed at me. Why go this far? Why lie so boldly? Why risk actual criminal charges? Most people lie to avoid embarrassment or get out of trouble. But this was something else. That night, after Mark fell asleep, I opened the emailed files one more time. I zoomed in on Linda's application, the way she described her limitations: back pain, restricted mobility, chronic fatigue, instability on stairs. And every symptom had only started after her husband's injury. Gary's back injury. The one he'd gotten from lifting something he shouldn't have. The one he said was minor. My pulse started pounding. Linda wasn't applying alone. She wasn't just seeking disability for herself. She was trying to get both of them classified as unable to work or manage their home without assistance. And then I saw it. Buried halfway down the application, under the support system section: primary caregiver. Daughter-in-law living in home as needed. Plans to assume permanent part-time caregiving role after husband's travel schedule decreases. Permanent, part-time caregiver for them. My throat dried out. She wasn't just using me for a claim. She was laying out a future for me that I had never agreed to. A future where I was their built-in caretaker. A future where my time, my independence, my life were all hers to script. Then came the final piece, tucked into a comment box at the bottom. Caregiver shows strong obedience and reliability. Appears dependent on family approval, making her a stable long-term support option. The words hit like a slap. Obedience, dependent, stable long-term support. That was why she insulted me behind closed doors. That was why she belittled my job, my choices, my independence. Why she called me useless and simple. Why she smirked when I quit the hotel job. Why she begged for me to visit, then treated me like a maid. It wasn't random cruelty. It was deliberate conditioning. She wanted me small. She wanted me dependent. She wanted me so unsure of my own worth that I would never notice she was building a life where I would always be available, always reachable, always ready to serve. Because people who doubt themselves make excellent caretakers. They don't question, they don't resist, they don't leave. She had been shaping me into that role for years, softly, quietly, with those compliments that always cut, with expectations disguised as favors, with guilt disguised as family obligation. And when she finally put the plan on paper, she described me not as a person but as a resource, a tool, a guarantee, someone she could exploit for the rest of her life. That was the chilling truth, not that she lied, not that she committed fraud, not even that she tried to ruin my reputation. It was that she never saw me as human, just an asset she believed she could own. And for the first time, I saw the real villain, not a difficult mother-in-law, but a woman who would burn down anyone's life if it protected her comfort. That was the moment the last bit of pity in me died. And the next step wasn't kindness, or boundaries, or compromise. It was revenge. I didn't wait another day. The morning after I uncovered the real reason, her twisted, calculated plan to shape me into her lifelong caregiver, I printed everything out. The disability files, the forged caregiver logs, the statements she wrote about me for the renovation company. All of it went into a thick folder that felt like the weight of the last 6 years. Then I sat down across from Mark at our dining table. "I need you to listen," I said. "All the way through, no interrupting." And for the first time in our marriage, I watched every color drain from his face as I laid the truth out piece by piece. At first he looked confused, then angry, then horrified in that way people get when they realize someone they trusted has been quietly planting landmines around them. When he saw the caregiver documents with my name forged into daily logs, he pushed his chair back like he might be sick. "She used you," he whispered. She planned this." "Yes," I said. "And she expected me to help her finish it." His hands shook. "We're going to confront them, today." And we did. The motel they were staying in was sad, stained carpet, buzzing lights, a smell like old air freshener and wet dogs. Linda opened the door, surprised, then immediately forced a smile. "Oh, honey, thank you for coming," she said, stepping forward like she might hug me. I stepped back. "We're not here for you to thank me." Mark walked in first. Gary sat on the edge of the motel bed, stiff and silent. Linda hovered, waiting for cues, like she still thought she could charm her way out of whatever she sensed coming. I placed the folder on the small round table. "This," I said flatly, "is everything you submitted to the renovation company and the clinic. Every lie, every forged note, every statement where you described me as your live-in caregiver." Her face went pale, then blotchy red. I didn't mean—" "You meant all of it," I said. "You wrote it, signed it, filed it. And you expected me to fix it when it blew up in your face." Mark stepped beside me, voice low but shaking. "Why would you do this, Mom? Why would you drag her into something illegal? Why would you—" He stopped, like the next words hurt to even form. "Why would you treat her like that?" Linda's mouth trembled before she said the most honest words I'd ever heard from her. "Because you weren't supposed to leave us," she snapped at him. "You were supposed to stay close, you were supposed to help, and when you didn't, she was the next best thing." The room went still. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't confused. She was angry that her plan didn't work. "You too have responsibilities," she added, voice rising. "Family should take care of family. And she pointed at me with actual contempt. She didn't have anything else going on. She should have been grateful we trusted her." That was it. The cold, ugly reason. The one that killed whatever little piece of me still hoped for reconciliation. She saw me as free labor. Permanent support. A convenient, quiet woman with no job, no boundary, no life. And she believed that made me hers. I took my list of rules from my bag and placed it gently on top of the folder. "These are my conditions," I said. "If you want my help clearing your name with the renovation company or the clinic, you will follow every rule exactly as written. And before anything happens, you will sign a written confession acknowledging what you did." Her jaw dropped. "You expect me to sign something that admits guilt?" "Yes," I said, "or you handle all of this alone." Gary finally spoke, voice gravelly. "We could lose everything." "That's not my fault," I said quietly. "It's hers." Linda looked between me and Mark, waiting for him to save her, but he didn't. "Mom," he said softly, brokenly, "sign it." She did, hands shaking, face twisted. No apology, not even then. But her signature was all I needed. I sent her confession and all supporting documents to the renovation company and the clinic with a clear statement. I was not her caregiver. I did not approve any renovations. And I will not be used again. The fraud department took over. I stepped back completely. As for Linda and Gary, they suffered the consequences of their own choices. Fines, investigations, a halted renovation, and a reputation they could no longer polish. Mark and I built new boundaries that didn't bend ever. And me, I got my closure the moment Linda asked, trembling, "What do we do now?" And I answered, "Figure it out yourselves, I'm not your maid."